will call roll.
Bartlett,
Here.
Hirsch,
Here.
Swadley,
Here.
Boersma,
Here.
Johnson, here. Reeves,
Here.
Majewski,
Here.
Engelberger,
Here.
Truel,
Here.
O'Connor,
Here.
Duranzik,
Here.
and Alderperson Jensen is absent.
Thank you. We have several proclamations, so if you'll bear with me for a few minutes. The first one is a telecommunicators or dispatch proclamation. Whereas professional telecommunicators perform a critical function when an emergency occurs requiring police, fire, or ambulance, as well as those related to forestry and conservation operations, highway safety, and maintenance activities. Whereas thousands of dedicated telecommunicators daily serve the citizens of the United States by answering their calls for police, fire, and emergency medical services, and by dispatching the appropriate assistance as quickly as possible. Whereas professional telecommunicators are critical to our country's emergency response and homeland security services, dispatching law enforcement, firefighters, emergency medical services, and other emergency responders 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whereas professional telecommunicators are not visible as the men and women who arrive on the scenes of emergencies, but provide the vital link to public safety services as part of the first responder team. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor of the City of Stoughton does hereby proclaim the week of April 8th through the 14th, 2018 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in the City of Stoughton, State of Wisconsin, in honor and recognition of our telecommunicators and the vital contributions that they make to the safety and well-being of our citizens. So we have that. We also have our proclamations for Volunteer of the Year, Business of the Year, and Friend of Youth. So our proclamation for Business or Person of the Year starts, whereas Stoughton is a community known for the dedication and commitment of its citizens. Whereas over the years, our community has benefited from countless volunteers and extraordinary business owners providing time, energy, and helping hands. Whereas volunteer efforts have kept our food pantry stocked, delivered meals to our homebound, and fundraised money to provide assistance when needed. Whereas Stoughton has been the beneficiary of many volunteer projects, such as the Opera House renovation, youth center projects, hospital expansion, and numerous park projects, to name only a few. Whereas day after day, we see volunteerism becoming more and more contagious. Whereas volunteerism proves to be full circle, as those who receive are grateful, those who volunteer are humble, and those in our community are thankful. Whereas National Volunteer Week reflects the power that volunteers and extraordinary business owners have to inspire by example. Volunteers both encourage those they help and motivate others to serve. So we have chosen Jeff Zarth as one of the Volunteers of the Year 2018. Jeff runs Volkswagens, wherein he takes donated vehicles, fixes them up, and then hands them out to those in need. So Jeff is very worthy of our Volunteer of the Year. The other Volunteer of the Year award goes to Eloise Christensen, and Eloise spends hours and hours and hours at our volunteering at our library. She does genealogy, she does any and every project that they ask her to do at the library. Another wonderful volunteer. Our Business of the Year this year goes to Kicks Unlimited. And Kicks Unlimited is a fairly new business in town, but has really embraced the idea of volunteerism and helping and doing everything and anything that is needed, not only of their clients, but of the community as well. So another great recognition. Stephanie Waninger has been chosen as our Friend of Youth for 2018. Steph has worked with the baseball associations for many, many years in our Stoughton Recreation Program. And then we also have, it is Thank a Lineman on National Lineman Appreciation Day. So if you see one hanging around, you should wait till he gets down off the pole, but then thank him or her. Line workers have a vital role in our community, working in harsh weather and sometimes hazardous conditions to keep electricity flowing year-round and to restore power immediately during an outage. In honor of National Lineman Appreciation Day on April 18th, Stoughton Utilities commends its line workers' commitment to service and safety. Our linemen are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they have to be ready for any situation. They're often the first responders during storms, making the scenes safe for other public safety workers. We value the work they do every day to maintain reliable services to homes and businesses. And this is a quote from our own Utilities Director, Bob Cardez. Line work is not easy. Linemen must have the physical strength and ability to be able to climb poles, dig trenches, lift heavy equipment, and more, all while wearing what can weigh around 45 pounds. They also expose themselves to danger every day, whether it be working with energized high-voltage lines or working 50 feet off the ground on a pole or in a bucket lift. Since power outages can happen at any time and can be caused by anything, from a storm to a car accident, linemen need to be prepared to spring into action at a moment's notice. Stoughton Utilities recently earned the American Public Power Association's National Electric Utility Safety Award, receiving a first-place award for its outstanding safety record, including that of the electric line crew. For the past 10 years, Stoughton Utilities has also received the top safety award given by the Municipal Electric Utilities of Wisconsin. There continues to be a strong demand for highly trained linemen. Learning the trade often involves completing a technical college program, followed by completing a 4-year apprenticeship program and on-the-job training. So that's truly a job that we can all appreciate and thank. So thank a lineman when you see him or her. One quick reminder that our reorganizational meeting is next Tuesday, the 17th, at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. Any communications from alderpersons? Alderperson Boersma.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. I'm very pleased to announce a farewell posted party for our own Mayor Donna Olson after many years of service. We were trying to add them up. It's either 50, 60, or 70 years, I guess. And so it's going to be at the Fire Department Training Room at 401 East Main Street from 4 to 7 on the 18th, which is Wednesday. And we're going to be we're going to probably be singing a song or two. I'm planning to bake a cake or buy one or the other. And our own Richard, the library guy, will be performing with his little group as well. So it's going to be quite a hullabaloo for the city, and we're going to have, it's just open for anybody who wants to come and say their farewells to our wonderful Mayor Olson.
Oh, thank you, Sid. I won't be going too far, though. We're still
Right.
here in town, and I've got a few more wrinkles, but not 70 years
Oh,
yet.
I'm sorry. I couldn't get an accurate number. I know that it's a lot of years in mayorhood
Yeah.
and a lot of years of other service.
You never want to say that for girls anyway, right? Alderperson Johnson.
Hi, thank you, Your Honor. I wanted to make an announcement. Stoughton High School this weekend is going to be putting on, excuse me if I mispronounce this, Sharanio de Burger Shack. The performances are Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They're $18 a ticket for adults, $15 for students. And you can get the tickets at www.showtix4u.com.
All right, thank you. Other communications from alderpersons this evening? Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Since this is my last official meeting, or regular meeting, I guess, I just want to thank you for your service, and I want to thank all of my council members that I've worked with over the years. It's been a real pleasure working with everybody. I want to thank the staff also. They've been a pleasure to work with as well, and I'm going to miss it a little bit, but we've got some newly elected people that are going to take over, and I just want to wish them all well. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Thank you. So before we get too far, I'd like to ask your indulgence as in moving agenda items 16 and 18 up on our agenda. We have some, some folks here that are waiting around to address those two items. So we'll move 16 and 18 to be right behind agenda item number 8. And with your permission, I'll remind us all when we get there. Sounds good? All right. We'll begin with public comment period. I don't have anyone registered to speak, but is there anyone who would like to speak at the public comment period this evening? Seeing none, we'll go along to consent agenda. Our consent agenda tonight consists of the March 27th, 2018 council minutes, Resolution 67, 2018, which is authorizing and directing the proper city officials to issue operators licenses to various applications, as you'll find in your packet. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Duranzik, second by Engelberger. Would anyone wish to remove an item from that consent agenda or make changes to those minutes? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Old business begins with Ordinance 11 of 2018, coming from our Public Safety Committee for a second reading. Alderperson Truul.
Thank you, Your Honor. Public Safety brings forth Ordinance 11-2018, amending Chapter 70-176, Paren 61, the City of Stoughton Municipal Code relating to parking restrictions on Veterans Road between the intersection of U.S. Highway 51 and Vernon Street, and would recommend approval.
Thank you. Motion by Truul, second by Bartlett. Alderperson Truul.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think we spoke a little bit about this. I mentioned this at a previous meeting. We were talking about kind of the upgrade and the improvements that are going to be happening along this highway, this area later this year. We took a look at the parking, on-street parking issues that we had there, and the chief recommended that we eliminate the parking, and that also allows us to have a bike lane in that area. So I would encourage your support.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Alderperson O'Connor.
I had a question if any of the neighbors that are affected commented on it.
Chief?
I believe actually Alderman Johnson received one message from one individual that questioned the availability of parking for their tenants on the, I believe it's the east side of Veterans Road in the apartment units. Although we've done quite a few drive-bys there during various times of the day and night and haven't really seen a lot of on-street parking there.
Okay. Thank you. Alderperson Johnson.
I'm just curious with the bike lanes. I know we want to encourage bike lanes, but just putting it in a couple block area as far as a long-term plan, I'm just curious on, I don't know if Rodney, if you can speak on that and what's going to happen later. Thank you.
This actually will extend bike lanes all the way from 51 to Academy Street, so it is a fairly long length. Bike lanes are in the transportation plan, especially in the one block that's proposed to have no parking on it. They're on the in the comp plan and in the bike plan to have bike lanes from Main Street to Vernon Street. So this implements that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's not quite like Kingsland where we have a 5-block area that stops.
Further comments or questions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Ordinance 12 of 2018 comes from our Planning Commission for a second reading. Alderperson Truul.
Thank you, Your Honor. Plan Commission brings forth Ordinance 12-2018, an ordinance approving a general development plan amendment at 815 Berry Street for the proposed deck addition and deck conversion to a screen porch, and would recommend approval.
Second.
Motion by Truul, second by Bartlett. Alderperson Truul.
Again, the basic information is in our packet. If you've got specific questions, Rodney has it up on the board.
Thank you. Comments or questions? No? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. New business begins this evening with Resolution 68 of 2018. Comes from our Utilities Committee. Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Resolution 68, 2018, authorizing directing the proper city officials to approve the Stoughton Utilities 2017 audit report and management letter, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Engelberger, second by Truul. Alderperson Engelberger.
Yeah, this is our annual audit that was presented at Utilities and passed 5-0. And if Bob would like to say anything on this?
Yes, actually, I'd like to introduce our finance manager, Jamin Friedel, in the back, and who will...
We almost had a new finance manager there.
I'm just going to come up and introduce Jody Dobson. She's a partner with the Energy and Utilities Group at Baker Tilly, and she's going to present the 2017 Utilities Audit Report and Management Letter. Jody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. The 2017 audit for the utilities went very well. As in prior years, it's received a clean or unmodified opinion. The process was very smooth, and while we always have some informational points and recommendations that we try to provide, there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses or anything that we need to report to you as a result of the audit. I believe you have in front of you a short packet. This is really 5 key benchmarks that we look at with utilities to kind of assess the financial condition at year end, and I just want to touch on each of these. So the first thing we look at is consumption or usage by customer sales data to see how the utilities are doing. And when I look at these, the electric utility had really no significant change overall. We saw a little bit of an increase in some of the commercial use and a decrease in residential, which is what we're seeing industry-wide for growing communities. And then in the water and the wastewater utilities, I would say it was relatively flat or slight decreases in usage. And again, that's what we're seeing industry-wide as weather patterns are probably the biggest driver of usage. Otherwise, we're seeing mild conservation continuing in those areas. So what that tells us is we just need to be more proactive in monitoring the financial results of the utilities. So if we look then at the next 2 pages, we have the rate of return for each the electric and water utility. Both the electric and water utilities are regulated by the State Public Service Commission, and the rates are designed to recover certain operating costs and then provide a return on the investment in capital infrastructure, which provides for an ability to finance ongoing improvements to the infrastructure. So when we look here over the last few years, the electric utility is currently authorized for a 5% rate of return, and those rates were established in April of 2017, so they're still relatively new when we're looking at this year-end data. And we can see the actual rate of return was higher than that. That's because there were some projects that were built into that rate application that weren't fully completed by year-end, so they're not in that base that you're earning on until this next year. And then for the water utility, the rates were last changed in 2016, so they're designed to earn a 5.25% rate of return, and we can see that the actual rate of return has been a bit below that, and so management is monitoring that and determining when's the right time to do another rate application with some of the things going forward there. The next number that we look at is the debt coverage ratio. Because the utilities issue revenue bonds, they have a requirement tied to the debt that says they need to have revenue streams to cover their operating costs, their debt service, and then a coverage factor for both the electric and water. That coverage is 1.3 times the debt service. For the wastewater, because of a state program they were able to borrow in, it's 1.1. And so as we look over the last 5 years here, we can see in the graph that all 3 departments have been consistently above that minimum requirement. And what's important to point out with that is that when there's earnings above that minimum requirement, that's what provides cash flows for the utilities to make their payment in lieu of taxes to the city, as well as to reinvest in the system for replacements of aging infrastructure. The next item we have here is unrestricted cash reserves. This would be all cash reserves outside of that that's restricted by the revenue bond resolutions. So this includes funds that are designated for future capital projects. Typically what we see here is a target to have a minimum of 3 months worth of operations on hand in case something unusual would come up. And then in addition to that, to think about future capital projects. So as we can see here, when comparing the actual to the minimum, all 3 utilities are in excess of that bare minimum. And I would say the electric and the wastewater utilities have been relatively consistent, so stable reserves there. The water utilities had a little bit more up and down. They had built up some reserves in 2016. Those were used in 2017, and that's a normal cycle when you have projects that aren't consistent every single year. So again, that's just part of management's planning process. And the last number here we have to look at is the investment in capital assets. How much is debt versus equity funded of the infrastructure for each of the utilities? As we look at the numbers here, we typically like to see no more than 50% debt. And so for each of the three utilities, there's nowhere near that. The electric is at 35% debt, the water is at 6% debt funded, and the wastewater at 27% debt funded. So all very strong positions. And what that really means is that you have the ability to borrow if there were a need to, but there's also proactive planning with cash reserves for certain projects as well. So overall, all three departments are in very stable and healthy positions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Alderperson Boersma.
Thank you, Your Honor. Every year, I think I ask this question, but as I understand it, there's some kind of special fund where you take money into, it's like a foundation, or it's a grant that can be used for people who are having trouble paying utilities and that kind of thing. Could you, I don't see it on this at all, on this report, and perhaps it's not properly asked at the right time, but I wonder where that money goes that is designated for that fund.
Sure, Bob can help us.
I was going to say, do you want to speak to how you spend
Yeah,
those?
I can speak to it, and perhaps Jamin can as well. We have a fixed fee that all electric customers pay, and they pay every month. And what happens is there's two funds that come out of there. One amount of money goes right directly to the state of Wisconsin, a department that in turn has monies come back to us. The others we can use directly for customer assistance. So what, right now we're approaching a time when the electric moratorium on electric disconnections is ending. So what we've been doing with customers going back to September and October, is we've been getting them wrapped up into various programs where these monies go, and they need to apply. And then if you look in our activities reports, the report that's prepared by Assistant Director Brian Hoops, he explains how much monies come out of those funds every month to help our customers. So generally speaking, all the money that's collected from our customers gets spread back to our customers and more. So I think that's the fund that you've been asking about in the past. That wouldn't really come into play, I think, in the audit, but that's something that every electric utility in Wisconsin participates in.
Is it about an equal amount that goes statewide and the same amount goes locally for helping our?
Generally speaking, what we see is that more money comes back to our customers than we collect.
Because we get a certain portion from what is contributed to the state fund.
Yep, and I think that there's a lot of efficiencies in trying to tie up our customers with various funding sources. And there is a fair amount of that goes on.
My concern is this moratorium where it is lifted and then people may lose their ability to have utilities if they can't pay their bills, and working all the way through the season,
Yeah.
and they accrue more bills, and there are some people who really need the help. And I would like to see just as much as possible for people to be able to apply for these funds, and I know they do it through other things like Salvation Army and all that.
Oh,
too.
sure.
But you know, some people are really, and some people even in my district are hurting because they accrue these funds over the winter and.
Absolutely, and even though there's a moratorium on the disconnection, right outside my office, I hear the staff talking to the various customers about where opportunities are available. And believe me, there's a lot of that goes on all year. It's picked up a little bit right now, and I see a lot more people in the office. There are funds available, and where funds are available, we want our customers to get it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Resolution 69 of 2018 comes from our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 69, 2018, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve contract 2-2018 road construction on Academy Street. Finance Committee met tonight, approved it unanimously. I move for approval.
Motion by O'Connor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Majewski. Alderperson O'Connor.
There was a small shortfall, about $40,000 in money available for the Academy Street project. We want to transfer $40,000 from another account, and Brett's here to talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you.
This is for reconstruction on Academy Street from East Street to Veterans Road, and we're doing street reconstruction along with curb and gutter, sidewalk, and extensive stormwater replacement and additions to the stormwater system. We did have a little bit of a shortfall for this budget item, but we did reallocate funds, or identify funds, I should say, in the street preventative maintenance fund, and that'd be to the tune of $40,000. That will give us enough money essentially to do this project.
Thank you.
So just a little bit about the bids. We did receive 5 bids for this project, which is outstanding compared to the last bid, which was only 1. So we did, it did come in $120,000 less than the engineer's estimate, which is outstanding, and I would recommend that we move forward with this.
Thank you, Brett. Any further comments or questions? We'll vote by roll call.
Hirsch,
Aye.
Swadley,
Aye.
Boersma,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reeves,
Aye.
Majewski,
Aye.
Engelberger,
Aye.
Truul,
Aye.
O'Connor,
Aye.
Duranzik,
Aye.
Bartlett.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Now we're going to move to agenda item 16. So we'll step ahead a little bit. Agenda item 16 is Resolution 77 of 2018, coming from our Public Safety Committee. Alderperson Truul.
Thank you, Your Honor. Public Safety brings forth Resolution 77-2018, a resolution authorizing and directing proper city officials to issue an operator's license to Daniel Rose, and would move approval for the purposes of discussion.
So, motion to approve by Truul. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't. Second by Bartlett. Thank you. Alderperson Truul.
As you'll see in the packet, the actual motion, or the actual vote on it, was 2-2, so the Public Safety actually recommends denial of it.
Thank you. I know Daniel is here this evening. I don't know if you wanted to step to the microphone and say something. Just know that it is being a recorded meeting, so.
I'm here to get my bartender's license. I hope that you guys would be willing to give me a second chance. I know I do have a criminal background. I was hanging around the wrong people with wrong people, so following bad times and screwing up and learning from those mistakes. And I just hope you guys would give me a chance to present the opportunity to better myself. And Michelle, the manager at the whatever bar that I'm applying to, she really likes me. All the customers like me. She's actually written a letter, because she couldn't be here, recommending me getting my license. Her cousin, Danny, is the owner of the bar. He likes me. We've talked several times. So, like I said, I just hope you guys would give me the opportunity to show my appreciation and what I can do for this community.
Thank you.
Yep.
Comments and questions from our alderpersons. Alderperson Hirsch and then Duranzik.
Sure. In the past, and I can't remember whether for people that was on the border, we gave like a probation of 1 year, and then we would revisit it in a year.
I'm going to look to Chief Leck.
Is that?
Yeah, we can do that, correct.
Okay. So I guess I would like to propose the 1 year kind of probation to revisit in a year.
I'm wondering, okay, go ahead, Chief.
Just want to put a little caveat on there, because the licensing period currently will now run between now and June 30th.
Right.
So you might want to extend that beyond a year, so it would cover the next licensing
Okay,
period.
all right, till June 2019.
Correct.
Okay. So that would be my,
And is that like a substitute motion?
Are you amending Resolution 77, is what I'm hearing?
yes.
Okay, and I would second
Is there a
that.
second? Okay. Further comments on the motion? Oh, sure, Matt.
Yeah, this gets a little complicated. So we have an application for an operator's license. As Chief Lex said, these are licenses that need to be renewed annually. And so the current license period would expire June 30th.
Correct.
I'm unfamiliar with this concept of probationary approval, so I'm not
Well,
really
we've
sure.
been doing it for the last 3 years here.
Yeah, I just don't remember that. I'm
Okay.
not sure. I don't recall what that is exactly. And so I suppose the idea is what? When let's assume, for example, that at the end of, so at the end of the current term, which is June 30th, prior to the end of that term, he's going to have to apply for another license. You'll have to vote on that. That'll have to be approved. And so you're saying now you want to approve a license and you want to attach some kind of probationary concept to it.
Last time I heard that was for 3 years, right?
No, what we have in the city is we either have a 1-year licensing period or a 2-year licensing period. Most of the time when you've had issues with anybody, you're licensing for 1 year. It's not technically a probationary license. It
Okay.
is just a 1-year licensing period instead of the 2-year licensing process that we've been doing.
So here's the question, the legal question I have that I don't know the answer to is, let's say it's now spring of 2019, and the gentleman is applying for a license for the period that begins July 1, 2019. If the council I think at that time, the council has to take a fresh look at that application, and you would have to either approve it or deny it based on whatever evidence is available at that time, okay? So I don't think that you could at that time say, well, we're now going to reach back a year and a half and look at the evidence that was before us then and now decide to deny your application on the basis of the facts that were in place a year and a half ago.
No, it was always the intent, if I remember from what we've done before, is between now and the next year, we look at that to see if there's anything new that has come up. And if there is, then we would most likely deny it.
Well, I think you can always look at, every time you've got a new application, you don't have to do anything special now to have the ability next year and the year after that, when reviewing the application, to determine whether there is a legitimate basis for not approving that application at that time. So you don't need to take any special action now to have that right, as I understand it.
No, but what I was trying to do is let's do it for the 1 year as opposed to going for the 2 year.
Okay, and so these operators license, I thought they were 1 year always.
No, we went to a program about 4 or 5 years ago where we staggered them because we had so many licenses. So some are on a 2-year cycle. I mean, they're renewed every year, but no, that is a 2-year license that we've been issuing, isn't it, Holly?
These are 2-year
That's
licenses?
not a renewal.
Yeah. Let's talk.
It says a 1 year on the
First,
application.
the first year is 1 year.
First
and
year is
upon
1
renewal,
year.
They get 2
Yeah,
years.
after 1 year, they can get a 2-year renewal.
That's correct.
Okay, so this would be a 1 year, considered a
This would
1
be
year.
a 1-year
but
license.
meaning through June 30th of 2019.
Correct.
So the motion is to approve the application for a license that need not be approved until 2019. Is that correct?
No, I think what the motion is to make sure that when the 2018-19 licensing period starts, that it's a 1-year license then. So they'd be approving a license now for the remaining couple months, and then when the next cycle starts, it would start as a 1-year license at that point.
Does the applicant, does the person here have to come in and apply again
Everybody will.
prior to June 30th?
Correct,
And there will have to be another vote on that?
correct, correct.
So the only issue tonight then is on a license through June 30th of 2018?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand.
And the other caveat that I would put on this, and maybe Attorney Dregney can address this a little bit, is the caveat that it is always easier to deny a license than it is to try to revoke, deny, or to suspend later on once one has been issued. And he can get into the property rights attachments and things like that. So I just caution you on that, and because the statutes are pretty clear on an unpardoned felony, the statutes do say that the applicant is unqualified to hold the license, with a little caveat in there that they use the language of may instead of shall.
So the comment that I wanted to make before we go too much further, I heard Alderperson Hirsch's motion, but as Chief said, this license that you're approving tonight runs through the end of June of 18.
Right, okay.
So you may not have to amend as it is, and then it'll go forward.
Then I'll
from there.
withdraw the amendment now that that has been cleared.
Right,
I thought we were
okay.
just doing it for 1 year versus 2.
Well, typically it's a 1 year, but June's coming soon. I have Alderperson Dranzik, Bartlett, Truul, and then Boersma. Alderperson Dranzik. Nope, you're all good. Alderperson Bartlett.
My question was answered also.
All right. Boy, we're just going right down the line. Alderperson Truul.
Mine was not answered. Technically, we asked for them to submit their application by May 15th. So we're talking about for the next year.
Right.
I just want to make sure people understand where we're going here. So, I mean, we effectively, if you do what's being proposed, this gentleman would be issued a license and within 40 days have to be reapplying. So just so we understand the timing of what we're doing, or what you're asking for.
That's kind of a funky thing this time of the year, no matter who applies.
Right.
Yeah. Matt, did you have something?
So I just don't know anything about the factual background here. So the chief made reference to an unpardoned felony.
Correct.
And the additional caveat there is that there needs to be a substantial relationship between the underlying felony and the licensed activity for that to apply. I have no idea what the actual criminal history is here, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've got Alderperson Boersma next, and then Reeves and O'Connor. Alderperson Boersma.
Thank you, Your Honor. The one issue that sometimes comes up when we're talking about these things is whether or not the person has engaged with or engaged in some kind of counseling with professional, whether or not that would apply in this situation or not. I think it's been our view as a council generally to just not require that, but actually at least mention that, the possibility of a person to talk to some kind of professional about the circumstances related to whatever is going on. And so I just mentioned that. I'm not sure it applies to this gentleman or not, but I think it's always a good idea to speak to somebody professionally if there's a concern. So.
Thank you. Alderperson Reeves.
I actually just had a question about, and we probably talked about this before, but how is it that we, can somebody just like not apply but continue serving? I mean, do we have some checks and balances? I'm just not familiar with how that works,
Yeah,
so
Holly
if you
can
could help me figure that out.
So each establishment needs to have one licensed bartender on staff at all times. So if he could still work where he's planning on working, but he couldn't just be at the bar by himself. So I guess what was your question?
Well, just how do the applications and
So
the
if
applications, do you have a list that you're looking at every year and say, oh,
Yes.
so-and-so hasn't come back in?
Yes, we have a list and we send out notices for renewals, but if he didn't come back in and reapply, we would just assume maybe he didn't work there, he didn't want a license again. The police department goes and does checks every so often to see if they do have a licensed bartender on staff, and if they didn't, then they would be penalized for not having a licensed bartender. They would need to shut down for the night.
Thank you. Alderperson O'Connor.
This is a question regarding the actual application. Kind of what Matt was talking about. It shows a 2013 conviction for the felony, and then it shows a 2016 extradition to McHenry County. Is that based on that felony?
It is based on that felony. I think that was a warrant for extradition for a non-appearance.
Okay.
That was part of the other reason that I denied it, was on the trustworthy aspect of the licensing process.
So he was convicted in 2013 on an earlier offense, do you know?
He can better answer that, but I believe it was a 2013 conviction, or did the conviction actually occur in 16?
No, it was 2013.
Okay.
I was on probation. And then
Come up, Daniel, why don't you come up to the microphone?
I was on probation, and then they revoked my probation, and then I sat 3 months, the remainder of time that I was supposed to be on probation.
And why did they revoke your probation?
2016.
Why?
Oh, why? Because I failed to appear for a probation meeting because my mom had just passed away, and she lived in Wisconsin, so I had to leave the state because I was next of kin, and I had to take care of family affairs.
Okay, and the felony was for burglary. What were you burglarizing?
Cars. We were going into open cars and taking stuff out of them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? We'll vote by roll call.
I need to interject. So there needs to be, if the license is going to be denied, there needs to be a rationale for the denial, needs to be in the record. If the basis for the denial is this felony conviction, the legal question is whether or not this conviction is substantially related to the licensed activity. I don't know, I'm not certain how to answer that question. I don't know that much about the history of this matter. It's for you to determine initially whether you believe it is or it is not, but it needs, that is a reviewable determination. In other words, it could be, your determination could be challenged. So as I understand it, the conviction, as we just heard, is burglary, taking stuff from cars. So the legal question for you would be, is that activity substantially related to the licensed activity here, which is being a licensed bartender and having the authority to essentially manage a bar independently and make judgments about serving alcohol?
I have Alderperson Truul and then O'Connor.
Attorney Dragney, the motion that's actually before us, as I made it, is to approve. So if folks turn it down, do we still need to have a?
Yes, because if the motion is not adopted, that the effect is a denial, and the clerk is going to have to send a letter to this gentleman that says, your license is denied and for the following reason, fill in the blank. And right now, the only reason I know of would be this felony conviction.
So process question is that we will vote yes or no. Yes is to approve the license, no is to not. And then after the vote, we would talk about the reasons for denial.
I think the reasons should be expressed prior to the vote.
Okay.
Yeah, and right now, if I'm hearing nothing more, I think the reason that I'm hearing, if there was nothing else said, I think what the letter from the clerk to the applicant would say is, the application was denied on the basis of your prior felony conviction. I've heard no other evidence on the question of whether it should or shouldn't be granted.
Yep. Alderperson O'Connor.
Well, for myself, I don't think this particular violation is substantially related to the operation of an operator's license, so I'll be voting for approval.
Thank you. Alderperson Boersma and then Majewski.
And I agree. I looked it over, and it looks like it's not related to anything related to alcohol and serving. So I will also vote in favor of his being able to be a bartender.
Thank you. Alderperson Majewski.
Question for the applicant. Is this your primary job?
Yes, it would be. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments? Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. So my understanding is the chief has recommended denial. Is that correct?
Correct.
That sounds contradictory to what I'm hearing the attorney say, and I'm going to vote no because our policy says that the chief denies under certain circumstances, and I generally follow the chief's recommendation on these types of votes. That's why I'm voting no.
Thank you. Further comments? Alderperson Bartlett.
You elaborate, Chief. I thought at one point you'd said you deny any that had a past felony conviction, or is that correct, or do you?
Well, usually I try to focus it on whether there's a related activity. And the way I looked at this one is that because of the activity in 2016 of the absconding on probation, that's relatively recent. And then I was looking at State Statute 111.335 Pren 1C1, which does not have the substantially related language attached to it. So that was what I was basing my recommendation on.
You want to give me a minute to look at that?
Absolutely.
You don't know that by heart? Not that one. All right. So ready to.
Point of order, Your Honor, just clarification. So technically, what's before us? Because I think we had a proposed amendment or whatever. And I just,
The amendment was withdrawn.
okay.
So what is before us is your motion
Back to
to
original.
approve. Back to the original motion, yep.
335 sub 1?
It's 1C1.
Substantially related to these. A comma here. I know. Felony, misdemeanor, or other offense. No, that felony also has to be substantially related.
Okay, that's correct.
Yep, yep. So, you know, these statutes can be tricky, but I think that Chief and I just looked together at the statute, and it does appear that this substantial relationship test applies. It's a difficult test to apply, and I'm not here to tell you that it is or isn't substantially related. I think that's your call, more than my call, at least at this stage of the game. But you'd have to make that judgment, and then, as I say, that's something that could be reviewed by a court if there were a legal challenge. But that's the question. Just so you know, that's coming out of the Employment Relations Act, which basically it prevents discrimination in employment or licensing decisions on the basis of a past criminal history, unless there is this substantial relationship.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Otherwise, we'll vote by roll call. Again, yes is to approve the license.
Swadley,
Aye.
Boersma,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reeves,
Aye.
Majewski,
Aye.
Engelberger,
No.
Truul,
No.
O'Connor,
Aye.
Duranzik,
Aye.
Bartlett,
Aye.
Hirsch.
Aye.
Motion carries on a vote of 9-2. We'll jump to item 18, which is Resolution 78 of 2018, coming from our Community Affairs Council Policy Committee. Alderperson Reeves.
Thank you, Your Honor. Resolution 78-2018, resolution authorizing and directing the proper city officials to adopt a policy regarding the use of personal computing devices for elected officials. And I move approval.
Second.
Motion by Reeves, second by Truul. Alderperson Reeves.
So essentially, this lays out a policy for any council persons that would like to use their own device. The gist of it is that the city staff will not offer support or minimal support in terms of adding programs. Council people would, or all the persons would be responsible for their own patches, virus software, and one thing to keep in mind is that a personal device could also be subject to inclusion in open records request. So I don't know if John's here, if anyone has some questions.
Welcome, John. Anything else you'd like to add?
No.
All right.
Did a very good job summarizing.
Great. Comments, Alderperson Reeves, Swadley, and then Duranzik. I'm sorry, Reeves. I'm looking right at you. Regina. Hirsch?
I think the other reason why we discuss this in this council meeting is it's a liability issue. If John starts to put new programs on a personal computer and it messes with other programs on that, it's a liability on the city if something goes wrong with, another person's business computer or something, and so.
The other liability would be is if I have it in my hand, I turn and trip and drop it. The city would be liable for it.
It's true. Sure.
But just to follow up, it wasn't that you wouldn't help that person set up their email account or get an access in. You could sit with them side by side and tell them how to get in. You would provide that kind of support. You just wouldn't physically touch their computer.
We would give them all the information they would need to connect to the specific applications they need to conduct council business.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Duranzik.
Yeah, that was not my impression from reading this policy. The city only provides for the notepad, which basically has a small screen. And for people who are visually impaired, or for someone like myself, I have old eyes. So I need to have a larger screen. And I went out and I purchased my own laptop exclusively for city business. And as you all know, we spend hours and hours reading, going to committees. I ask a lot of questions to make, proper decisions. And to me, this policy actually throws up barriers and makes my job harder by not allowing me to use the services of the IT director to ensure that my laptop is being used efficiently and securely. To me, it's a consumer unfriendly policy. Reading it, that's the way I felt when I read it. And, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing that this is really friendly to me. And, if we don't start to provide some laptops, to people, who actually need them, that's discriminatory. So, I would really like to see this go back to the committee and maybe flush it out a little bit more. Because my reading, and I read it through several times, I felt kind of alienated because I have my own computer and I feel I have to have my own computer. So.
Okay. Council President Swadley, and then Reeves and Bartlett.
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess I was just going to ask John to maybe define what you meant by minimum support in the policy, the language that's in there, and how it might relate to some of the concerns that Alderperson Duranzik has.
As far as the personal device goes, really what we would do is give them the password to the Wi-Fi network so they could connect to the network while they are within the city proper. We would also then show them how to put shortcuts on their desktop to get them to the city docs, or a shortcut to get to their email.
Thank you. Alderperson Reeves.
Well, I would agree that this is not user-friendly, but I see it as a couple different issues personally, that I think that there is a risk in using your personal device for the reasons that are in the policy. I would like to see us look at buying devices that are bigger and more like what's in front of you, so maybe that's a route we could consider, budgeting for something besides a tablet. But I think that there are risks in using a personal device for the city and the person that has it, but I agree I'd like something bigger, and I'd like us to be looking at budgeting for something bigger, so that's how I see the difference.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Bartlett.
I guess I support the policy. I would like to see maybe something change for different user needs if they need a larger screen or something. I am one that uses my own device. I'm an engineer, technology guy. The city one just doesn't meet my needs. It's more efficient. I don't need another laptop just to read PDF documents. It's just a paperweight. I guess I would like the option to opt out of this, save the city a couple $100, maybe to be used for other larger screens for other people who would like it. So I just ask for that. And I get all the other issues with it, the liability. I completely understand that. So I know some of us, I would not need that. But in the public records issues, all I have on here are downloaded packets that are public information and public notes, compartmentalized. I could easily provide if it was a public information request or something. So I don't see that as an issue on my side. But I'll support this. I think it's a good framework to start at. It does need a little bit of work. I would like to have some options for people, not just be provided to anyone, and possibly an opt-out option also. But thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Boersma, and then Hirsch.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a question for John. So if we had our own personal devices and we were using them, and we got a virus, would that affect the city's information and
It could, if you're sending out an email with a virus embedded into the email and you send it to the council members or to the leadership group or anybody else within the network, that could be transferred
So
to the
then,
network.
in that event, then you would almost be forced to intervene in our computer and then the city computers too, right?
Well, yes, and then the other side of it too, though, is if it's your own personal device on it, there is going to be, has to be documentation in place and signed that you are maintaining your security patches from your operating system. Also purchased antivirus software on it to make sure that those are, definitions are kept up to date to keep your personal device secured, in turn keeping us secure.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I think we should consider, if we're going to be, we should, if we need the equipment that and it's a city thing we're dealing with, we should have some kind of way and access to a better computer or whatever, or a computer rather than an iPad like I have, which I've been using for a long time. But I find this thing pretty unfriendly, actually, because it's so small and it doesn't really meet my needs. Because when I work, I'm using a fairly high-level computer at this point, and I have to sort of think down on it. But I think the issue of exposing the city to a virus from our own personal computer that we might pick up from somebody sending us an email is a real problem for the city. I mean, it's going to cost the city money if we're infected, I think.
I guess that's one of the advantages of the tablets in front of you is they're a simple device. You can get different size screens on it. I know you've got 10-inch over there and an 8-inch. But you don't download, you don't install software on them. You don't download software. You just use it strictly for the browser capabilities and the email capability that's on it. But other than that, there's really no functionality.
Thank you. I have Alderperson Hirsch, Bartlett, and then Johnson.
To address, the needs of other current council members and future, is there, this is actually pretty small. I mean, it's fine for me right now because you can address it, but is there another notepad that we can actually get if a new council member requests that has a bigger screen?
I can definitely research that. The size that I've been running across mostly is 10-inch. That's 10-inch diagonal.
All right. And is there a low-cost laptop that could do kind of the same? I know then you have to download the software, but it's just really reading PDFs if you're doing for just council business.
You can get inexpensive laptops. They're a little more than the notepads. There's more maintenance to them, but.
I got mine for
Thank you.
$175.
Alderperson Bartlett.
Yes, well, I was one that received a laptop when I was elected, but it was, for what we use it for, I don't see a reason for a large expense to go too high grade, and it wasn't. Every time I touch it, it takes 20 or 30 minutes, upgrades, updates, and everything. Question I have, can you clarify the antivirus policy? I was given a laptop, and they had a trial antivirus on there, but I was never told the city would pay to maintain that antivirus software. And I'm not aware, are you keeping the licenses for all these devices, and are you upgrading that every year when those run out for like McAfee or whatever antivirus are on these? Because I didn't know that was being done.
I wasn't aware there was antivirus on your own personal devices that was being maintained by the city.
Not my personal device. The one I was issued from the city when I was first elected, I was issued a laptop, and it had antivirus. I believe McAfee on there. May have been Norton. I don't know, but it was a trial period, and I wasn't told the city would pay for that to extend that antivirus protection. So I wasn't going to pay for that just to read PDFs and open that computer every so often. So I did not continue that service with antivirus licensing on my city-owned laptop.
I know that I'm not aware of any renewals that are coming through for anybody's personal devices.
So it's on them to
It's
keep their
on them.
antivirus and pay for that service to keep it updated.
Alderperson Johnson.
I came on the same time as Matt, and I thought I heard from somebody that if we didn't want to use the laptop, that maybe in the future we would put the money that was going to be for the tablet to a laptop. I'm not going to use the tablet. They're a pain in the butt. They're too hard to use, and you lose screens and everything like that, and so I'm going to be voting against this if it means that we have to use our laptops, or our excuse me, our tablets.
Oh, it doesn't say
It doesn't say that, yeah.
It doesn't say that.
Does it?
No.
Just have to meet certain criteria.
Are there further Alderperson Boersma?
Just one other thing. So is there a possibility that we could have our own laptops handed over basically to the city and have them run it? You know what I mean? We would own it. Like Denise would have it, and she'd turn it over to you and say it's part of the city auspices rather than our own personal auspices. I mean, it's just a question.
It still puts a liability on the city for their personal device, which is one of the things that we were trying to.
What I'm just thinking, if it was used exclusively, if we had our own laptops used exclusively for city business rather than personal business.
I'm looking at Tammy, and, you know, budget season is coming again. It comes every year, right? If that is the will of the council, budget more money and buy yourselves a different device if truly the iPads aren't working for most folks.
Yep, I purchased this for $175, and again, I don't have any whistles, you know, bells and whistles on it. Basically, I can just open up emails, and I can open up, you know, the packets, and that's all I use it for, and that's it. So, and I was actually thinking of donating it when I was finished with it, because I already have another laptop and a desktop, which I have to use the desktop, by the way, to look at numbers and maps. My goodness, how can you guys look at any maps on this little screen here? And we get maps, you know, as part of our packets, so.
Sounds like maybe a referral back to CACP to talk further about what you'd like to go, how you'd like to go forward. Is there a motion to refer back?
So moved. Second.
All right. Motion by Truul, second by Majewski to refer back to CACP. Thank you, John. I'm sorry, we're just going to use that as a motion and move on, I'm sorry. We should vote on that. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Motion carries. Holly's going to keep me in line. There was a motion to approve so on the floor, or on the table. But a refer back motion, I think, supersedes.
Yes.
I believe it supersedes, yes, okay. So we're just going to let that one hang out there. Okay, so we'll move back to agenda item 9. Resolution 70 of 2018 from our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 70, 2018, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to adopt the proposed changes to the shared ride taxi service. Finance Committee approved 5-0 at our meeting. I move approval.
Second.
Motion by O'Connor, second by Duranzik. Alderperson O'Connor.
At the beginning of the year, Running Incorporated took over the taxi cab service for the city of Stoughton. And through their operations, they came to recognize some changes that needed to be made in some operational things, as well as conforming to what actual practice was. And so they brought a list to us. Really appreciate them coming, and I think they've committed to coming quarterly. These changes would take effect June 1st, so we can notify everyone that might be affected.
Thank you. Tammy, was there anything you'd like to add, addition?
No, I think that covered it. I mean, we tried to outline all of the issues, specific issues that were addressed, and some of these things are actually taking place right now and not necessarily being effective, but overall, anything new would be effective on that date, June 1st.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Alderperson Hirsch.
I just had that one question maybe you guys can answer with respect to the transport of wheelchairs without a patient in a wheelchair. I understand that there is a problem that if a patient, you pick up a patient, they're in a wheelchair, you drop them off at home, you have to return the wheelchair, and they were trying to get an extra fee. isn't it possible that this company actually just buys a wheelchair that they keep in their trunk, and so they don't have to have that fee or that thing going back to the hospital? I mean, that would be a way to resolve this issue instead of paying an extra amount of money all the time or not picking up patients if they're wheelchair bound.
I think the issue, as much as anything, was the time that it took to transport that equipment back, and it denigrated the service that they were able to provide. And I think if you look at the numbers of rides that they're giving every year, that it's very substantial.
Right, so if they actually owned a wheelchair, then you don't have to waste the time to actually bring it back.
I think Tammy can help us with that.
Actually, a lot of the issue had to do with anyone who was at the hospital who had maybe been transported by ambulance, and so then for them to go home, they had to be transported in a wheelchair. They're going to try and work with nursing homes as well as the hospital as to if somebody's leaving the hospital, have somebody somehow get their wheelchair to the hospital, if that's the case. It's just that they were being required to, or asked to, transport an empty chair back to the hospital. So they're working with the different agencies and trying to address it, but I just wanted to raise the point that it had become an issue.
Okay.
Alderperson Boersma and then Johnson.
I think that Alderperson Hirsch has a great idea, that they have their own chairs, but they would need probably 3 of them, because they need to be fit for the size and condition of the patient.
I'll interrupt just real quick to say that's also a liability question, in that I'm not sure that the taxi cab drivers are trained in how to do all of that.
Yeah.
As well as storage. Where do you put an empty wheelchair when you have two actual wheelchairs in the van that only accommodates 2 wheelchairs? One of the vans accommodates 1 wheelchair, and the other new one has a place for 2. So there would be space issues as well.
I'm sorry, Sid, I just wanted to interject real quick. Did you have anything else?
Well, yeah, I've worked in a nursing home, and if you have kids, it's one size of wheelchair. Adults and then large adults, there really is a requirement for 3 sizes for the population that we're dealing with.
Right. Alderperson Johnson.
I work at a hospital right now, and the taxi drivers do have to bring the wheelchairs back, and they don't get paid anything extra. But every wheelchair that does come back, we have to check. So there will be probably, Your Honor, like what you were saying, a liability and how the wheelchairs are taken care of, and I think you'd be getting into some interesting things that way.
Thank you. Alderperson O'Connor.
Well, I think the other thing to remember is that they've committed to come back quarterly, and we can keep addressing the issue to see if it is a problem, as well as anybody that might have a problem with contacting us directly.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Resolution 21 of 2018 also comes from our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 71, 2018, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to adopt an agency fare for shared ride taxi program. Finance approved 5-0. I recommend approval.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by O'Connor, second by Truill. Resolution 71.
71.
71.
Yes. Trying to throw me.
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
This too came through the conversation with Running Inc. And the agency fare is essentially a fee that agencies would pay so that I guess the system wouldn't be abused.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Anything addition to add, Tammy?
The only thing is they're looking, this is specifically paid for by managed care organizations. They're trying to establish a rate so that it's across the board for all of those and for-profit organizations as well.
Thank you. Okay. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Agenda item 11, Resolution 43 of 2018 comes from our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
This is resolution authorizing and directing proper city officials to amend the City of Stoughton debt management policy. Finance Committee met tonight and approved unanimously. I move approval.
Thank you. Motion by O'Connor. Is there a
Second.
second? Second by Bartlett. Alderperson O'Connor.
This was updating our policy on our debt management. One of the things we discussed tonight revolved around the TIF payoff. Alder Duranzik saw that in there was a 10-year requirement for payoff of a debt, and that obviously isn't our practice, so we changed that.
Thank you. Questions or comments? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Resolution 73 of 2018 also comes from our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 73, 2018, authorizing and directing the Director of Planning and Development to prepare and submit a Wisconsin Department Natural Resources grant for runoff management Streetsweeper. Finance approved it unanimously. I recommend approval. Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by O'Connor, second by Bartlett. Alderperson O'Connor.
And this is a authorization to have Rodney put in for a grant for a street sweeper that we have planned to purchase.
Correct.
Anything further, Rodney?
Just to highlight, it is for a high-efficiency street sweeper, so we changed the title on it. It's actually for something that would be more suitable for our conditions.
Great, thank you. Questions?
I'm just wondering if it's a Dutch sweeper or not.
A what?
A Dutch, the Dutch are known to be street sweepers.
That's your
Are they high efficiency?
They are high efficiency, they're all high efficiency, but yes.
Then potentially it is. We won't know right yet. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Resolution 74 of 2018 comes from our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Planning and Development to prepare and submit a Wisconsin DNR Department of Natural Resources grant for runoff management, a bioretention basin conversion. Finance Committee approved unanimously. I move approval.
Second.
Motion by O'Connor, second by Truul, I believe. Oh, Bartlett. Alderperson O'Connor.
And this is a grant to correct a deficiency in a wet detention basin.
It'll allow us to change a pond or a system in our swale that's not functioning as well as a wet detention system would. Wet system would allow sediments to better settle out and produce a better water quality discharge.
Thank you. Comments or questions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Resolution 75 of 2018 comes from Public Safety. Alderperson Truul.
Thank you, Your Honor. Public Safety brings forth Resolution 75-2018, a resolution authorizing and directing the proper city officials to issue a 6-month Class B fermented malt beverage license to Stoughton Merchants Baseball. Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Truul, second by Duranzik. Alderperson Truul.
This is a regular and
They do it every year?
yeah, pretty
And do it quite
straightforward
well?
for us. Yes.
Comments? Alderperson Boersma.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, this also goes to the issue of kids in the city, and when I'm looking at these policies and it involves kids being present, I typically am voting against it, and I plan to do that tonight, too.
Right. Thank you. Further comments or questions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
That motion carries with 1 no. Resolution 76 of 2018 comes from our Public Safety Committee. Alderperson Truul.
Thank you, Your Honor. Public Safety brings forward Resolution 76-2018, a resolution authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve a temporary Class B retailer's license and special event license to the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce for the purposes of handling the 2018 Sit-in-the-Mai Festival. And I move approval.
Second by Truul. Oh, you guys had a contest there. I'll go second by Duranzik. Alderperson Truul.
Once again, an annual license.
Also does very well. Alderperson Boersma.
And once again, surprise, surprise, I will be voting against this.
Further questions or comments? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries with 1 no. And that takes us to Agenda Item 17, Resolution 72 of 2018. This is a resolution authorizing and directing the proper city officials to enter into a memorandum of agreement, an MOA, among the City of Stoughton, the Town of Rutland, and the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, WisDOT, regarding changes in access to South Highway 138 in the City of Stoughton and the Town of Rutland. And we'll start with Rodney.
The packet contains the draft material. It also contains the preliminary plat approval that placed a condition on future phases of Kettle Park West to work through obtaining approval, if you will, of a connection of Oak Opening Drive to State Highway 138. We've met on a number of occasions with the DOT officials, the town representatives, and the developers to try to work through this draft. I think we've come to a draft that's acceptable, in my opinion, to the city, that allows that access to be awarded to the city or worked through as part of the as how the agreement outlines to get that connection made at Oak Opening Drive. It also discusses the opportunity to have the connection south of 138 at the Kettle Park Way, fourth leg of the existing roundabout. So I think with that, there's a number of other folks here. The DOT's represented here, the developers here, City Attorney Dragney, and myself, and Councilman Swadley was also present at least at one of the meetings with the DOT and the group I mentioned earlier. So we can certainly open it up to them and give you their opinion and discuss each item you want to on this item.
So why don't we start, Attorney O'Callahan, did you want to start with the discussion or represent? Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Olson and council members. My name is Dan O'Callahan. I'm a representative of Forward Development Group. I'll just speak very briefly. I know that Mr. Holker is here from the DOT, and you may prefer to hear from him about his input and the department's input on this agreement, which after all is an agreement between the DOT, the city, and the town, talking about what access is going to be permitted, not just for this development, but also along that entire corridor. So we were obviously part of the conversation in that the development project that we've been working on for the last number of years precipitated the conversation, but it really opened up into a larger conversation about the access in the corridor. And since that entire corridor is, access to the corridor is controlled by the DOT, it became necessary to kind of lay out the framework, and that's what this document does. Again, it's not specific to this development, and actually the development project itself is not specifically referenced in here. So this is the framework that's been laid out. We're happy to answer any questions if there are questions about the design of the access or how our project relates to that, but otherwise I would leave it to Mr. Holker.
Great, thank you.
I do have a question for him.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess I was just wondering, when did you become aware of the fact that one or two driveways needed to be vacated to allow for the Phase 2 access to 138?
So are you referring to the driveway that's immediately to the west of that intersection at Oak Opening Drive?
There's actually, according to the map, there's that one driveway, but then to have the roundabout, you also then have to vacate the next driveway. And so I'm just wondering where in this process, since it's been going on for several years now, when did you become aware that those driveways would have to be vacated to allow for the connection of Oak Opening Drive to 138?
Well, we've been working on these specific plans with the DOT for the past 6 months or so, since the council asked us to address the issue.
Okay.
So what we're doing here is we're looking at future access. And there's
I understand that. I just was just wondering when you became aware of, the fact that those would have to be vacated. If it was through just this MOA, or as you just said, you've been working with DOT for what, last 6 months?
Right.
On this?
On this agreement.
On this agreement.
Right.
And you became aware of the fact that those driveways would have to be vacated in order to have this access to 138.
Right, so specifically, and I hope I'm addressing the question, but specifically the conditions that the department has requested as part of this agreement about those specific driveways, that came up within this context. But if you look at, and if you're curious about sort of the longer range vision for planning this, and you look at the comprehensive planning process the city went through to lay out an intersection at this location in the comprehensive plan, it was always part of the comprehensive plan that there would be this intersection at this location.
Yeah,
and there
I
are
know that,
conflicts
yeah.
with existing driveways there. That's why it's a much longer term vision.
Okay.
So the first phase of the access that's proposed is for the right in, right out, not the entire roundabout. Obviously, the traffic just doesn't warrant a full roundabout at that location at this point. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, that's the vision for it, and that's what's being laid out in this framework. And yes, there would have to be some driveway changes in order to install that roundabout.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Michael, would you like to talk us through a little bit about the DOT process, please?
Yeah, I know that is. Thank you.
Sure. Once again, I'm Michael Hoker from Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and first of all, I'm here more as a resource for you for any questions that you might have. But as we go through this, we just wanted to make sure that long-term there was the state facility was protected to operate safely and efficiently through this area. We got the request. We are for economic development, so we worked with the city, the town, and the developer to come up with what I think we feel is a, once again, safe and efficient access point to get in there that was requested. So I'm just here to answer any questions you may have about the agreement or anything else with this.
Thanks, Michael. Before we get into questions too much, is there anything, Matt, that you wanted to share as just sort of information before we go into?
The only thing that occurs to me that I think might be worth pointing out is just to look at the resolution the council approved on April 12 of 2016, so 2 years ago now, conditionally approving the preliminary plat for what we have been referring to as Phase 2 of Kettle Park West. One of the conditions of approval is that before the city will sign a final plat for areas B, C, and D, those are defined areas, one of the things that's required is that the connection of Oak Opening Drive to Highway 138 has been resolved to the city's satisfaction. And so as I understand it, Rodney's got it up there, so they're under B at the very end there. Okay, so this agreement is, I think, one of two things that is being, one thing that's being proposed to address that condition. If this memorandum of understanding is approved, I think that gets us part of the way, but not 100% of the way to resolving that. The other thing is the preliminary plat itself doesn't currently show that connection, so I think there are two things that would have to be done to address that. One is approval of this agreement among the DOT, the city, and the town, which really creates the opportunity for the connection to be implemented, and then either a change to the preliminary plat to show that connection or a final plat that shows that connection. So I just want to kind of put this in the context of how that condition would be approved or would be addressed, shall we say.
Thank you. All right, I know that Regina had her hand. Denise, Tom, and then Sid.
First, I want to thank you for working with the city and the developers to get this resolved, because I think we've been waiting on this. Obviously, I didn't realize it's been 2 years since we discussed that. Time flies when you're having fun. The only question I have is that lot, now I lost the maps. When on your first phase, I think it's the Dvorak property, have they been notified that their access is no longer going to be there, and there's actually now that they have to have a driveway into Oak Opening, and who's going to pay for them not having that access to 138 anymore.
Assuming you mean, I don't know the property owners, I'm assuming you're referring to lot 3?
Yes.
On the map. That would be up to between the city and the developer of how it is.
Okay.
One of the things that we put in here as a stipulation was that everybody was aware that the developer does not have eminent domain for condemnation.
Okay.
So that there would have to be some process, some way to get that access point. So we wanted to make sure that was known. The department would not be involved in that. And other than coming to the agreement on this, of this would be safe and operate correctly, the department really has no part in it, other than we would be involved in reviewing plans and ensuring that there's proper construction oversight, so that when the state facility afterwards is in place, that it would function. So that would either be the city or the developer that would have to do that.
Okay, so that's the one question. But then when the phase 2, with respect to the roundabout, there's a removal of access of the other lots, I think.
That would be number 1.
Yeah, number 1. And so when you remove those access and you don't seem to have like a frontage road, again, that's something that the developers would have to propose of how now they're going to be able to leave their property?
Yep.
Okay. So that's on them, that's not part of your plan? Okay.
Not the DOT.
Oh, thank you.
Right. Okay, so I have, Matt, you want to say something?
Just to speak to that, so we haven't negotiated a development agreement yet that addresses those issues. The DOT is not responsible for those issues, for addressing those relocation issues, property acquisition. Those are issues that are going to have to be addressed between the city and the developer in the development agreement, both with respect to, the phase 1, and if the city wants to get into the discussion of phase 2, then I guess we'll have that discussion as well. But we haven't started that process. I don't know if the developer has any information about the lot 3 as far as phase 1. I think maybe you do have some information about where that stands, but I'm not sure.
I'm just concerned if these maps get out to the public and these are the landowners, they're going to be questioning what's going on. That's all I wanted to clarify.
It would be helpful to know what discussions have been had with the property owners, because I think there have been, but I don't know.
Yeah, there have been. That's a good question. So we actually had an agreement to purchase that property, that lot 3, 2 years ago, so in 2016, when we first brought this plan forward. But at that point, we didn't have what we have now, or perhaps will have soon, which is an agreement with the DOT to allow for that access at that point. So the message we received from the council was, you've got the cart before the horse, go work out the access with DOT and then come back, show us that framework, show us what could be, and then proceed with your development. So we had a purchase agreement that's long ago expired. It would be on us to figure out how to make that happen, to make that reconfiguration happen as shown in the drawing. This says what would be permitted, not what will happen. So this is more of a plan of what is acceptable.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Alderperson Duranzik.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of what Regina was talking about. So in Exhibit B, what we have is a roundabout. And I assume that the DOT will determine when there needs to be a roundabout placed here.
Yeah, there's provisions within here of, we would have to look at if its crashes increase or if there's development on the south side going on there, and that would be part of that.
Okay, so if the DOT decides that there has to be a roundabout, can't you use your eminent domain to then vacate the driveway on Lot 1?
If the project was being built for our purposes to handle state traffic, then yes, but this is to handle traffic going into a private development, so we would not pay or get involved with that.
Isn't this a state highway?
Correct.
Okay, and
But the improvements that are being made to it are driven by local development on either side, so we don't get involved in paying for those.
well, okay, so I thought that you were going to put a roundabout at 13851.
Correct.
And isn't that driven by local development? I mean, in fact, everything that you do is driven by local development.
No, that's driven by the general traffic that uses the facility. We could go through and say, the local development in here, we aren't going to grant this access point, and our traffic that uses the facility 138 flows just fine. It's a request came and said, we have a private development that would like access here, and we said, we'll work out a plan of how it will happen, but then you have to pay for those improvements for that private development.
Thank you, Michael. I know that we have Alderperson Boersma, Majewski, and then Johnson. Alderperson Boersma.
I have three things I think to say. One is I want to compliment and thank staff, especially Rodney and other staff who's been working on this, and also the council. I remember a couple of years ago I said, you know, I can certainly favor this new part of the development, but I think we need access into it, and also for the potential for future use on the south side of that property. And so and then I also want to thank the DOT for being open for this, and also the town. I think you know the town. It's an implication for the town too. So that's what I wanted to say, and I think that I'm kind of surprised that it's taken so long, and I think people are antsy to get started on development. I know it takes a long time the wheels of what we do take a long time, but I think I'm certainly in favor of this whole thing, because I think it gives at least a potential for us to expand both that development and also potential for the south side of that. We've got a fairly large sort of idea about what we're going to use on that south side too. So I think even if we don't have it completely, I think we have really gone a long way, and I just want to compliment everybody for doing that. So.
Thank you. Alderperson Majewski.
Thank you. I do have a couple questions. First, I do understand that this is developer-driven, and the DOT is just responding to that request. I have a couple questions, though, for DOT. First of all, why write in, write out only?
We were worried about the traffic, because most of the traffic crashes you would have would be when you cross lanes, so it would be the left-ins or left-outs. And in looking at the original TIA that was done, it was not necessary for this location. So therefore, in the interest of safety and what was needed for operations, it was determined that right in, right out was the best option at this point.
Right. So, okay, so we get this right in, right out, and phase 2 goes in, and it's a booming success, and we have to go forward then, and at some point in time, because of it, it triggers the need for phase 2 roundabout. So my question then is, in the right in, right out, that this will be developed by this will be paid for by the developer. Who's paying for the roundabout when phase 2 kicks in? Is it the developer? Because by this time the developer has sold his lots and he's already gone. So my question is could it not have been designed so that, as it is the roundabout that's already existing, where you only have one leg in?
You mean like a three-legged roundabout, so you wouldn't have
such as we already have at Walmart?
Yes, it could have, but it was, once again, that wasn't a proposal necessarily that was brought to us that was needed at this time, so that would be a discussion between the city and the developer.
Thank you.
Because we've said you can approve we would approve the roundabout. They would just have a leg, and right. We've done that before.
So that is my concern, is that we're being told we can get this out here. We're going to do it as cheap as possible, and then when the time comes when traffic volumes go up, where's the bill going to go? We're going to be sitting here looking at how much does a roundabout cost these days?
It's a tricky question, because it depends upon how many lanes are going.
Well, let's just say like the one that's currently existing at Walmart.
I would say a standard roundabout with 2 lanes in, 2 lanes out, all 4 directions, it'd probably be $1.5 to $2 million ballpark.
There you go.
Thank you. Alderperson Johnson.
This might be for Matt. So if the property is not acquired, the city, it's going to be the city's responsibility to use their eminent domain to take the property from the homeowners, correct?
Unless the city takes the position with the developer that the developer the developer has to acquire those in order to move forward. That could be a condition that the city attaches to its approval, but the city certainly has the authority to use eminent domain. These questions of cost and implementation are, again, not addressed by this MOA. This memorandum of agreement really does not speak to that issue.
Okay. I'm just warning the property owners that they're coming at you.
I guess it does speak to that issue in the sense that, at least as between the state and the city, the state will look to the city to be responsible for implementing the MOA. So, and the city then has the opportunity in negotiating with the developer to say, okay, developer, here are your responsibilities before we're going to agree to move forward. So the state is going to expect the city to be ultimately responsible for implementation. The city will have the opportunity to negotiate an agreement with the developer to address how that implementation will occur and what the developer would be responsible for, what the city would be responsible for.
Thank you. I have Alderperson Bartlett, and then I'll come back.
I'm going to support this. I think it's a good agreement and way too long in coming. I would just want to echo Alderperson Boersma's comments. Thank the staff and the DOT for working with us and the developer as well, not just looking at this one development, but our future comprehensive plan. I think it's great that we've looked at that. So I just want to put out there, I think this is a good thing. We need to, it still doesn't set the development in stone. There's still a lot of progress work to be done. It's a lot of approvals and agreements will be coming to us, but I'm going to support this one for now.
Thank you. Alderperson Boersma, and then O'Connor.
So can property owners move their driveways with this plan?
Can property owners move?
Well, if we're going to impede on their driveway use, can they move their driveways to be able to get onto 138?
I think everybody except for parcel 3 in the stage 1 has access still onto 138. So you're asking if parcel 3 could have their driveway in another location to still be onto 138?
Yeah.
I don't think it would fit within the part of the reason. There's 2 reasons it was moved. One of the reasons it was moved is we have our access control out here is what's called 8425, which is statutory control of the access, and which locks in essence, we go through a highway and we say the access that's out here is the access that's going to be out here. For us to take that back, we have to have a reason that's in the benefit of the traveling public of changing the access out there. And one of the big things is a lot of times it's 1 for 1 or 1 for more than 1 that we would prefer. If you're going to add an access point, especially something like this, we'd like at least 1, if not more, other access points pulled off to make it safer. But then the other part why it's pulled off is that access point on parcel 3, just with the width of that and where we have the taper lanes running in, it just doesn't fit within that area. So in essence, it has to be pulled out where it's being pulled off for 2 separate reasons. So I would say no, it really would not fit back onto 138.
Follow-up question. I'm a realtor, and so when you have a property and there's no access point, there are provisions for people to go over other people's land to get to your own property and that kind of thing, and that is a possibility too, I would assume, because you're not supposed to, you can't destroy the access to get onto your own property. Nobody can really do that legally, I don't think. But I
think that's all part of how the acquisition would take place to move that access point on 3.
Thank you, Sid. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you. A couple questions. Was any modeling done for people that want to do a left turn in or left turn out from opening?
modeling in.
Well, how would they go about getting out of that development? And
Out of that development, the left end would most likely be somebody would drive past and go down to the Walmart roundabout and just turn around and come back and make a right in. The left out would be, they would come out one of the other access points coming out of the development.
you don't see
And
any
most of the
problem?
people, no, most of the people coming left out, you're already heading in the correct direction to use one of those other access points, so it's not really going the wrong way to make that move.
So you don't see any problem?
No, we didn't see a problem with that.
Any idea what it costs to put in this right in, right out thing?
We have not put any numbers. The developer may have looked at it and they may have better numbers. I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Duranzik.
Yeah, a question for Matt. This property, 3, is outside of the city. We have eminent domain outside of the city?
We could. I'm not saying we would use it here, but we could.
Oh, we
If
can?
needed for transportation purposes, yeah.
They get a driveway
Oh,
right
okay.
here. You don't need it eminent domain. Their driveway just gets moved
Other
over
questions or comments?
Yeah.
Council President Swadley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would also like to thank all involved with putting this together. It's been quite a few meetings. I actually attended one early meeting in Madison and 2 in Stoughton, and the township people and the developers worked very hard. They flew people in to attend these meetings. So there's been a lot of time and effort and resources committed to get us to this point. And I obviously, support the MOU, and really the purpose of this is for us to be able to take the next step to make the second phase a reality. As it was mentioned, there's still, quite a bit of work to do. We have to enter into a developers agreement. I think the developers are shown a willingness when I met them last week to listen to some of our concerns for phase 2 and work with us in order to make a project that not only the council but the community will support. And I would encourage others to support this agreement.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Yes, we'll vote by roll call. Oh, I'm sorry.
There's never a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. We didn't start out with the motion. We started out with discussion. Thank you, Alderperson True.
Second.
And did you want to make your motion? Why don't we have you state your motion so that, for the record.
Would move approval of the resolution authorizing and directing city officials to enter into a memorandum of agreement amongst the City of Stoughton, the Town of Rutland, and the Wisconsin Department of Transportation regarding regarding changes in access to State Highway 138 in the City of Stoughton and the Town of Rutland.
Second.
Thank you. Second, first by Truel, second by Boersma. Further conversation? We'll vote by roll call.
Bartlett,
Aye.
Hirsch,
Aye.
Swadley,
Aye.
Boersma,
Aye.
Johnson,
No.
Reeves,
Aye.
Majewski,
Aye.
Engelberger,
Aye.
Truel,
Aye.
O'Connor,
Aye.
Duranzik.
Aye.
That motion carries on a vote of 10 to 1.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
By Majewski, second by O'Connor. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Come back and say goodbye.